Hey, how's it going, y'all? So today I want to go through and discuss a new up-and-coming topic that's been prevalent in society recently. Using literacy and new types of literature, they are discussing history in movies. So, history in movies. A good way to explain this is the traditional sense of documentaries. Like you go through, you learn like the History Channel, right? You learn how things were, how they transpired, how it affects us, all these different things. And that's the old version of it. Nowadays, they're going through and modernizing that by going through and putting historical events in like action movies, thriller movies, scary movies, comedies, rom-coms, right? Romantic comedies, different types of literature that they're incorporating actual historical events. For example, in all these movies I'm going to go through and list, make sure you check the ratings and make sure you go through and have parental permission before you watch any of them. If you ever do, I'm not telling you to watch them. I'm just using them as an example, being that they are out in history. Movies like Dunkirk, movies like Pearl Harbor, movies like the Battle of the Bulge, right? All these are different historical, like military events, especially, and they're going through and making them kind of similar to real life, or they're changing them up, which is what I'm trying to talk about for today's activity or today's topic. The debate between historical accuracy or Hollywood fiction. You can go through and keep a event like Dunkirk, keep it as real and historically accurate as possible by going through and saying, hey, they're going to save 3,000 people on the beach, right? That's just what happened. I'm just throwing numbers out at this point. So use this as a grain of salt, like to take it with a grain of salt, like numbers and the stuff I'm going to be saying, like portraying like numbers wise. Fact check. These are just for hypothetical explanations to explain. It's all just hypothetical. Say they save 3,000 people off the beach for the movie, right? In real life, if they're trying to keep it accurate to real life, then they actually would have saved 3,000 people on the beach. So you would see in the movie that they said, oh yeah, we saved 3,000 people, Commander so-and-so, Nimitz, right? Or whatever. Cool. Dude's name was Nimitz, by the way. Nimitz. Cool, says the dude. We saved 3,000 people. That's great. We are having a good victory, whatever, right? They're keeping it accurate in the movie to that. But unfortunately, one of the downsides to keeping things accurate is it's not always the most entertaining, if you will. It's not always the most visually thrilling to see a bunch of drama and talking go on. But that stuff is very crucial to actual history, having people talk about things, giving speeches, all these things like Winston Churchill, the leader of Great Britain at the time, like the UK. He was the leader of the country, and he went through and gave speeches, and sometimes not the most entertaining to watch. But it was very critical and very crucial at that time that he gave those speeches, because those speeches gave people morale. Morale is it gave them a reason to keep going, a reason to keep fighting when they wouldn't. Honestly, it might have been easier for them at the time to feel like they could have just surrendered. If they surrendered, they would not have had to keep fighting, had to keep suffering from all the struggles of war. He wanted to say, don't give up. Don't just take the easy way out and say, oh, we give up. We don't want to fight anymore. Keep fighting. Keep going for justice. Keep going for what's right. But that's not always the most fun thing to watch in a movie theater. So therefore, sometimes movies go through and incorporate historically accurate events and change up some other ones. They keep it semi-historical or based off of historical fiction. It's like historical fiction. They take, the main events of what happened, bing, bang, boom, and they add in some fictional aspects to make it more interesting, right? So you might see a plane that flies in that was not around during that time. We'll say like a fighter jet, right? That was released, years after the battle, like a Mustang, right? Say a Mustang flies in at the very beginning of World War II, right? Mustangs weren't really used during then, or they weren't even, I don't think, invented at that time. So say a plane that was modified or created later on was used in a particular battle where it did not exist. That People recognize, oh, that's a Mustang flying in the air, right? Or it's like a strata bomber, big old plane flying around like the Flying Fortress, right? I think it was a B-52. So you say that flying in the air, and it wasn't used during that time. They used a different type of bomber, right? People recognize those things, so it's easy to point out and say, oh, I know what that is in a movie, and connect, A to B. And not everybody knows when it was used in war. They just know that it was used in World War II. They didn't know that it was used later on in war versus the beginning. You're having to keep those aspects in mind when it's historical fiction. They go through and change things around. It's got the same kind of accurate storyline, but they change it. Then it gets into more, fiction, where they have historical aspects of it. It's not historical fiction. It's fiction with a splice here and there of actual history, right? So you might see, like, I don't know, we'll go through and say like a time traveler movie, right? Where some dude hops into a time machine and goes back in time to World War II, and all of a sudden he's fighting in the war, right? Sure, you might see actual historical aspects of the war, but, documented wise, I've never seen or heard or read, or many of the history books I've read, where a time traveler goes back in time and fights in World War II. Anything that's been vetted and been agreed on by scholarly sources, or that's actually happened. That's just fiction with historical aspects. So all these different movies are prevalent in society nowadays. I wanted to go through and discuss about that and how it applies to you as a historian. Whenever you're watching these movies, go through and see what you can pick out. Oh my God, I know this right here. I know this part right here. I learned this in class, yada, yada, yada. Pick out what parts you know and see what parts just don't add up right, or what parts don't seem to flow with the type of topic that we're discussing or that you're learning about in class and how it relates to the movies. Go through and instead see what fits. Be like a mini detective, if you will, going through and seeing what parts of the movies are historically accurate and what parts of the movies are not. And ultimately, when you're watching a movie, as long as you're having fun, that's a really, really important thing, because, even though you can learn some really important things, even from watching historical fiction, right? You can learn some really important things about history. It's also good to go through and vet what you've learned, and if you're not having fun, you're really not going to learn that much too. So remember, always check and make sure everything is historically accurate post-movie before you see this is what actually happened and put it on a test. Go through, make sure you vet and read the sources, read the material, read what actually happened, look it up, and see if that is actually accurate. Okay? Well, hope you all have a great day. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a comment on, like out loud or on the video, and I'm happy to help. All right. Thank you all very much. Hope you have a great day.